Good afternoon to all. I'm happy to welcome you at the Trade and Health event. And this is the first event organized by our Committee on International Trade Law this year. I know it's Friday, almost an end of what I'm sure was a pretty busy week, and I thank you for being with us. This event is being streamlined on our Facebook page, and it will be accessible in the future. My name is Maria, and I am a core coordinator of the committee with Olesa and Anna, which are both present today. I am working as a delegate for economic affairs at the Permanent Mission of Ukraine in Geneva, and I'm connecting here from Switzerland. It is officially a year since COVID was declared a pandemic by the World Health Organization. And tomorrow, the March 13, for us in Switzerland, it will be exactly 1 year since the Swiss authorities have introduced first restrictive measures, and our lives have not been the same since. In light of this situation, to which we all find ourselves for the last couple of months, for us as the coordinators of the committee, this topic came to mind quite easily. What was not easy, however, is to find the experts in the fields that would be willing to share their views and experience on the topic. So we are very grateful to our speakers that are here with us today. And I would like to welcome Christopher O'Toole, the counselor at the Permanent Mission of Canada to the WTO in Geneva, Olena Chumakova, the expert from the Ministry for Development of Economy, Trade and Agriculture of Ukraine, and our representative from the pharmaceutical sector, Stefan Sadoryak, the Global Digital Manager at Novartis, and Max Proskurov, Government Affairs Director, Roche, Ukraine. For our discussion today, I would suggest that we go first into two presentations by Chris and Olena, followed by a quick Q&A session, and then we will hear from our representative of pharmaceutical sector. To set some background, I would like to make a brief introductory comments. COVID-19 and everything that surrounds this pandemic is unprecedented. The challenges we as a global community face are extraordinary. Every country has its own approach to quarantine requirements, import-export restrictions, movement of citizens, workers, and tourists. What is true for everyone is that all have been affected. The coronavirus pandemic has destroyed livelihoods and claimed the lives of more than 2 million people worldwide at the beginning of this year and counting. So, of course, it is only natural that everyone, every person, company, government, international organization has been asking itself the same question: how we can contribute to the fight against the pandemic? Or maybe more accurate, how I can survive through this storm. We will be looking today at the trade and health issues from the perspective of what trade can do to facilitate the circulation of medical supplies and stop the spread of the virus. But also how vaccination would help us to go back to normal or business as usual, what that normal will be. WTO Secretariat and WTO members have been working hard since the day one, trying to find solutions to both questions. You can find several reports prepared by the WTO Secretariat on matters like how WTO members have used trade measures to expedite access to COVID-19 critical medical goods and services. There is a checklist of issues with trade impact for governments to help ensure that trade policies support the development and promote distribution of COVID-19 vaccines. What is the role of trade in building resilience to diseases of animal origin, as one should be aware that zoonotic pandemics may come more frequent due to factors including environmental degradation, intensive farming practices, and the effects of climate change. On the other hand, the WTO members themselves were also doing their job, which is both to protect their population and to ensure compliance with trade rules and obligations. As of 2nd March 2021, WTO members have submitted a total of 329 notifications related to COVID-19 measures, with Brazil, EU, and USA submitting the most. That does not mean, however, it does not indicate that those members introduced most of the measure. It just implies that they are striving to be transparent about their approaches to fighting the pandemic. There are several countries that have not notified any measure, and one cannot reach a conclusion that not notification means no measures were introduced. So based on these notifications received from members, the WTO Secretariat has prepared the note analyzing them and subsequently the measures introduced to respond to the COVID-19. The key findings were as follows. First, notified measures fall into 4 broad categories: streamlining certification procedures, ensuring that medical goods are safe, making food available by relaxing technical regulations, and addressing COVID-19 risk from international trade in live animals. Around 2/3 of these notifications are related to product standards and regulations or procedures to assess conformity with such measures. The standards and regulations and related measures notified by those WTO members mainly affect trade in personal protective equipment, food, medical equipment, plant products, and live animals. Following the trade restrictive measures introduced by some members at the first on medical goods and then on food supplies, there was a need for action from WTO members beyond transparency. And at this point, I will pass the floor to Chris, who will provide more information on the efforts by members in this field.
Great, thanks, Maria, and thanks very much for the kind invitation to be here today to speak to you a little bit about these measures. I'm just going to bring up on the screen here. All right, that's good.
Yep. All good.
Excellent. All right, so I won't. What I'll basically do is I'll go through a little bit of the history here and bring us up to date as to where we are here in the WTO in terms of the Trade and Health Initiative that is being championed in part by the EU, but sort of also as sort of a bigger group effort within the Ottawa group of members to try to find ways for trade to address some of the concerns that Maria's just been raising. What I'd like to do first is just you'll see there the various WTO statements on the slide, just to bring you back a bit to essentially what was happening a year ago and then the lead up to the middle of June. Essentially, there was three main statements. There's a few others from members, but essentially trying to express a political will from certain members to respond with open and predictable trade, to support the multilateral trading system, and to send a message to other members and to companies and to citizens that there is a way we can work together and collaborate to ensure that the trading system can continue to provide the goods that we need to be able to address the pandemic. You saw, I think, in June, the EU came out with a concept paper regarding trade and health that covered a number of items related to tariffs and export restrictions. But a number of other items related to government procurement and some things related to remanufactured goods, which we're not getting into. And when I say we're not getting into, I'm speaking now specifically of the Ottawa Group June 2020 ministerial statement and then the November 2020 General Council communication. So again, this is kind of the idea behind this is that there are a number of members, including within the Ottawa Group, that want to work together to try to find ways to address COVID, how we can make things happen to ensure that we have the access to the goods we need. That action statement from June 2020 included 6 items. One of them included an initiative on medical supplies, and essentially what that was a direction from our ministers to look at and to explore ways in which the trading system could come up with some ways to address the crisis and address the pandemic. And that the result of that was that communication, as you see at the end in November. And I will actually going to turn to the next page because I think that's a bit better way to kind of focus the discussion. So that there was a discussion in the General Council in December 2020. A number of members were quite interested in this idea of coming up with an initiative, coming up with a declaration from the WTO, from all WTO members, in fact, to present a political commitment not to take trade restrictive measures and to facilitate trade and to be more transparent in the measures. You spoke a little bit, Maria, about the notifications that members have sent in terms of the measures that they've taken, both facilitative and restrictive in response to the pandemic. But maybe what I'd like to do is just kind of focus in on the 5 areas that are listed there that are in what we've done now is from the General Council discussion, the Ottawa Group has turned it into a declaration. And so on each of these, I'll try not to spend too much time, but I think it's useful to have a discussion as we go through this. Export restrictions. So these are restrictions that are actually allowed under the GATT, under Article 11 of the General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade. They are restrictions that, when taken in times of crisis, are allowed to be imposed, but they're supposed to be time limited and they're supposed to be targeted as part of the process that they impact. The problem with them, and here I think a good example is obviously on vaccine production, is that there are companies, they don't produce vaccines. They don't have all of the supplies to make the vaccines. They don't have all of the glass to make the vials. They don't have all of the steel to make the needles or the plastic to make those needles, the vials that go with the needles. And so when you put export restrictions on certain products, you impact the supply chains for companies who may be producing things. So what the draft declaration speaks to is try to put some parameters around members to seek to have members look at different ways to address what they have a concern about in terms of shortages of essential supplies in their market. And it's really about trying to not prevent members from imposing export restrictions, because I believe members will always want that sovereign right to be able to do that, but to create a process and create some stricture around how they do it. Customs, services, and technical regulations. You spoke a little bit to that around the notifications related to technical regulations and the rules around access into markets specifically around labeling, for example. There also was a number of trade facilitative measures that were put in place, especially at the border. The Ottawa Group presented a document to the Trade Facilitation Committee in September that listed a number of measures that we all took in terms of making sure that trade was as frictionless as possible at the border. I'm sure you recall some of the difficulties that were had in terms of, customs offices were closing, or the arrangements, trucks were backed up because you weren't able to get inspections because, inspection workers had to stay home, or of the restrictions around meetings of larger groups of people. And so just to give you an example in terms of Canada and the way that we approached it, one of the ways was to transition to an all electronic approval process for documents. So what happened was our customs services quickly moved to allow for importers to submit their documentation online through PDF forms. And then the customs officer, the agent, was able to review those forms, and in some cases actually respond back within a couple hours with an actual stamp that would allow for the entry of the products. Services as well, similar sort of thing. I think New Zealand and Singapore have been a strong proponent of looking at ways to, improve distribution services and improve air freight services. That was another one of those issues that was early on in the pandemic, and to some extent still, I guess, on the maritime side, but had some difficulties in terms of allowing or facilitating the movement of goods across borders when there was pandemic quarantine restrictions, and you had to deal with flight crews coming in with products on airplanes. Tariffs. Tariffs is another one where what we're looking to do is seek to have the recommendation, at least in the proposal, is members reduce tariffs on goods that they deem essential to addressing the pandemic. And we have the WCO, the World Customs Organization, and the World Health Organization early on in the pandemic collaborated on a list of essential goods that would be useful for addressing the pandemic, and they produced that list and shared it widely and updated it since then. Transparency and review. So here, as you said, Maria, on terms of the notifications, especially on the export restriction side, this is one of those areas where sometimes quicker is better, but because of the way the rules are set up, even if you put in a new export restriction under the GATT, you're not required to notify it for at least 6 months. And so in some cases, as we saw last year, 6 months is forever. And so the idea here is we're trying to encourage members to notify any export restrictions they put in place as soon as possible, but also notifying trade facilitative measures. For example, coming back on the tariff side, there was a number of members, including Canada, that reduced their applied tariffs on medical supplies. And in terms of communicating that information to other WTO members, there actually isn't a rule. We only notify our applied tariffs once a year. But what we're trying to do in this process is to allow for, or to encourage members to notify upfront, or to provide that information willingly to other participants. But also, and this is where I think the review comes in, there's a role for the WTO Secretariat to play. You mentioned a number of the papers that they produced over the last year that have been essential, I think, in understanding. These are all on their webpage. Speaking of transparency, they're all on their webpage and accessible. They're very useful background and very useful information in terms of what members have been doing, but also things related to the supply chain for vaccines. And then lastly, cooperation of the WTO with other organizations. So here, I think we've already seen this. Our new WTO Director General is very engaged and passionate about, building up alliances with other international organizations and working with them to address the situations we have facing us. And this includes obviously the WHO and the WCO and what the WTO can do to help them, deliver their mandates. So in terms of, as I say, outreach in the lead up to the May General Council, that draft declaration, we're seeking new co-sponsors for it. This is something, as I said early on, this would be a political declaration to signal our intent to maintain an open and transparent trading system and ensure that, do what we can to support efforts to address the pandemic. And then hopefully our intent is to issue it in May at the General Council here in Geneva. And then post-May and onwards to MC12, that's when I think we start to look at where we can create new rules or where we can create new guidance for members in terms of how to do these things, how to react in the future when we're faced with similar situations. As I said earlier on the export restrictions, for example, what are best practices? How can we collaboratively work together to ensure that we don't impact our collective ability to produce goods that are necessary to fight any sort of future crisis that we have? What can we do on the tariff side to create resilient supply chains and allow companies to invest smartly to ensure that if there is a situation in one area of the globe, then they're able to source their products from another area to be able to continue to produce the goods that we need here. And then on the trade facilitation side, again, how we can work with donor members and how we can work with capacity building measures to help implement the trade facilitation agreement, fully implement it as quickly as possible. That's one of the lessons I think that has been drawn so far from this situation, is that members who had progressed further in their implementation efforts, and members who had digitized and had sort of been able to go online very quickly, they had a relatively seamless transition as compared to others who had a much more difficult time in terms of maintaining that frictionless flow of trade at the border. I'll stop there I think that's pretty much as far as I wanted to go for now.
Thank you so much, Chris. Just quickly to follow up, the Ottawa group is the group of 13 countries. Correct me if I'm wrong. It's Australia, Brazil, Canada, Chile, European Union, Japan, Kenya, Republic of Korea, Mexico, New Zealand, Norway, Singapore, and Switzerland. And maybe just a quick follow-up question for you. Are there any obligations for the signature of the Ottawa statement as of today, or it's the paper in development?
You mean the draft declaration?
The Ottawa statement that was sent by the first signed by the Ottawa ministers, right? With the ministers of the Ottawa group. Yeah. So we're now in the process of gathering additional co-sponsors to that paper, and as I said, the objective is for a multilateral statement from the General Council, but at the very least we have a number of members, a good amount of members to make that political commitment to maintain those open borders and to ensure support for finding ways to deliver the goods for addressing the pandemic. Okay. Great, thank you. And just also to follow up what you just said, indeed, on the web page of the WTO website, there is a special COVID-19 page where all the information is accessible about the measures that members have been taking, the policies, the recommendations, analytical paper by the Secretariat. And now we will move to hear from Olena on her work at the ministry related to trade and health from the perspective of the government of Ukraine, and in terms of their work, the work of the TRIPS Council. Available instruments to facilitate the equitable and affordable access to vaccine, as well as a discussion around the waiver proposal originally submitted by India and South Africa in October last year. The presentation of Olena will be done in Ukrainian. And I'm sorry for inconveniences.
Добрий день, шановні колеги, дякую за запрошення. Мене звуть Олена Чумакова, я представляю Мінекономіки, Департамент багатосторонніх та двосторонніх торговельних угод, управління співробітництва Світової організації торгівлі. Враховуючи, що тематика мого напряму роботи є моніторинг діяльності Ради ТРІПС, я сфокусую мою презентацію на обговореннях питань, пов'язаних з охороною здоров'я, які порушуються під час засідань цього органу. Як ви знаєте, основою діяльності Світової організації торгівлі є міжнародні угоди, однією з яких є угода ТРІПС. Ця угода встановлює мінімальні стандарти та принципи забезпечення прав інтелектуальної власності, а також процедури і методи їх захисту. Сферами дії є патенти, промислові зразки, авторське право, торгові знаки та інші. І враховуючи тематику нашого заходу, хочу зазначити, що угода ТРІПС містить положення щодо можливості здійснення членами СОТ заходів, необхідних для охорони здоров'я населення, які передбачені у статтях 8, 31 та 31 біс. Моніторинг виконання положень угоди ТРІПС забезпечує Рада ТРІПС, яка підзвітна Генеральній Раді СОТ. Я трошки нагадаю, засідання відбуваються у штаб-квартирі СОТ, але зараз у зв'язку з пандемією вони відбуваються онлайн. І, наприклад, у минулому році відбулось 7 засідань Ради ТРІПС, і на кожному з засідань у зв'язку з пандемією обговорювалися питання щодо взаємозв'язку прав інтелектуальної власності та охорони здоров'я, що підтверджує їх актуальність на даний час. Рада ТРІПС є форумом для обговорень членами СОТ основних питань, які становлять торговельний інтерес. Її діяльність включає обговорення та огляд імплементації положень угоди ТРІПС, обмін інформацією та міжнародним досвідом. І за пропозиціями членів СОТ на засіданнях Ради ТРІПС можуть обговорюватись додаткові питання, які також можуть стосуватися, наприклад, забезпечення доступності лікарських засобів. На цьому сайті я обрала і представила інформацію щодо тематики обговорень питань взаємозв'язку прав інтелектуальної власності та суспільного інтересу у сфері охорони здоров'я, які обговорювалися протягом останніх 3 років під час засідань Ради ТРІПС. Наприклад, обговорювалися такі питання, як можливість використання положень угоди ТРІПС для забезпечення доступності запатентованих лікарських засобів за економічно обґрунтованими цінами, а також, наприклад, застосування законодавства про конкуренцію з метою врегулювання питань щодо отримання та використання прав інтелектуальної власності, та інше. І як зазначено на слайді, ініціатором та активним учасником багатьох таких обговорень була делегація Південно-Африканської Республіки. Трохи я підвожу до пропозиції Індії і ПАР. Зважаючи на ситуацію з пандемією, делегацію Південно-Африканської Республіки разом з Індією у минулому році було ініційовано пропозицію щодо звільнення від зобов'язань за окремими положеннями угоди ТРІПС, яку представлено у документі СОТ IP CW669. Обговорення цієї пропозиції здійснюється під час засідань Ради ТРІПС для подальшого прийняття відповідного рішення Генеральною Радою СОТ. На сьогодні близько 60 членів СОТ є коспонсорами цієї пропозиції, і, на їх думку, оперативне прийняття рішення в СОТ щодо так званого вейверу може сприяти збільшенню виробничих потужностей та забезпечити доступність вакцин та інших товарів, необхідних для подолання пандемії. На цьому слайді представлено текст проекту рішення Генеральної Ради СОТ, згідно з яким пропонується встановити, що члени СОТ звільняються від зобов'язань щодо імплементації чи застосування розділів 1 авторське право та суміжні права, 4 промислові зразки, 5 патенти та 7 захист нерозкритої інформації частиною 2 угоди ТРІПС, якщо це стосується профілактики, стримування або лікування коронавірусної інфекції. Передбачається, що вейвер стосуватиметься таких видів медичної продукції, як вакцини та інші лікарські засоби, діагностичні набори, засоби індивідуального захисту та вентилятори. На цьому слайді можна побачити історію обговорень. У жовтні минулого року вперше цю ініціативу було представлено на засіданні Ради ТРІПС. У листопаді-грудні минулого року дуже активно члени СОТ обговорювали, обмінювалися поглядами щодо обсягу, сфери, механізму імплементації цієї пропозиції, порушували запитання, надавали відповіді, у тому числі у документах, які наведено на слайді. Але не вдалося досягти консенсусу, тому у грудні на засіданні Генеральної ради СОТ було схвалено фактологічний звіт про стан обговорень і підтримано пропозицію щодо продовження обговорення цього питання. Такі обговорення було продовжено у січні-лютому. Під час таких обговорень коспонсори висловлювали пропозиції щодо необхідності переходу до конкретного обговорення цього документу, а також представляли відповіді на запитання опонентів, які представлені також письмово у документах СОТ. І знов-таки не вдалося досягти консенсусу, і на початку березня знов було схвалено рішення з пропозицією продовжити розгляд цього питання. І розгляд продовжувався 10 березня під час чергового засідання Ради ТРІПС. Під час обговорень всі члени СОТ поділяють необхідність досягнення спільної мети забезпечення доступності вакцин та інших товарів для всіх і наголошують на важливості питання щодо розширення виробництва вакцин для подолання пандемії, важливості партнерства у цьому зв'язку. Ураховуючи ситуацію з захворюваністю та нестачу вакцин, коспонсори пропонують якнайшвидше перейти до конкретних text-based обговорень документа, який було зазначено вище, для оперативного прийняття рішення в СОТ. Водночас опоненти пропозиції наводять свої аргументи та порушують питання щодо сфери та механізму імплементації цієї пропозиції. І досягти консенсусу поки що не вдається, в тому числі і стосовно переходу до конкретного обговорення тексту документа. Ще хотіла б згадати і інші ініціативи секретаріату СОТ, які також обговорюються під час засідань Ради ТРІПС. У зв'язку з ситуацією з пандемією під час останніх засідань Ради ТРІПС члени СОТ активно обмінюються інформацією щодо заходів у сфері інтелектуальної власності, які застосовуються з метою протидії поширенню коронавірусу COVID-19. Цю ініціативу було запроваджено секретаріатом СОТ у минулому році. Формується список таких заходів і постійно оновлюється на веб-сайті СОТ. І таке питання включається в порядок денний засідань Ради ТРІПС, і під час його обговорення члени СОТ аналізують інструменти, наявні в рамках Угоди ТРІПС для подолання пандемії COVID-19, а також заходи у сфері інтелектуальної власності, застосовані у відповідь на сучасну кризу з метою сприяння розвитку інновацій та розробці препаратів для боротьби з коронавірусом. Наприклад, на останньому засіданні, яке завершилось вчора, свої заходи та погляди з цього питання представляли делегації Чилі, Канади, ЄС, Еквадору, ПАР, Китаю, Росії, Індонезії. У виступах повідомлялося про відповідний досвід членів СОТ та наголошувалося на необхідності посилення міжнародного співробітництва для боротьби з пандемією. Оскільки під час обговорення пропозиції Індії та ПАР часто згадується система примусового ліцензування, передбачена Угодою ТРІПС, то хотіла б зазначити, що під час засідань Ради ТРІПС щорічно проводиться огляд застосування цієї системи. Ця процедура передбачає інформування Радою ТРІПС Генеральної ради СОТ про стан імплементації системи примусового ліцензування у національне законодавство членів СОТ. Проект звіту про щорічний огляд застосування цієї системи розглядається на засіданні Ради ТРІПС, після чого подається на розгляд Генеральної ради СОТ. Останній огляд було проведено під час засідання Ради ТРІПС у жовтні минулого року. Розглядаючи це питання, члени СОТ мали можливість обговорити шляхи застосування і використання цієї системи, обмінятися досвідом та поглядами щодо її функціонування, ефективного функціонування. І так, наприклад, найменш розвинені країни висловлювали занепокоєння щодо складності використання цієї системи та неможливості її оперативного застосування. Нагадую, що передбачені протоколом зміни угоди ТРІПС надають членам СОТ можливість здійснювати експорт фармацевтичної продукції, виготовленої за промисловою ліцензією, до країн, які або взагалі не мають власних потужностей, або в фармацевтичному секторі, яких наявних виробничих потужностей недостатньо для задоволення власних потреб охорони здоров'я. В тому числі, наприклад, у випадку пандемії або епідемії. Зміни до угоди ТРІПС набрали чинності у 2017 році після прийняття протоколу 2/3 членів СОТ, у тому числі і Україною, згідно з відповідним законом про прийняття протоколу. Вчора на засіданні Ради ТРІПС, головою Ради ТРІПС також було повідомлено про те, що вже 132 члени з 164 прийняли протоколи, можуть використовувати передбачені ним положення. Україна здійснює постійний моніторинг стану обговорень членами СОТ питань щодо взаємозв'язку прав інтелектуальної власності та охорони здоров'я, про результати яких ми намагаємося інформувати МОЗ, наукові установи та інші зацікавлені суб'єкти. В рамках дотримання зобов'язань з забезпечення прозорості до Ради ТРІПС направляються нотифікації про зміни законодавства в сфері інтелектуальної власності, які можуть стосуватися і питань охорони здоров'я. У жовтні минулого року Україна також брала участь у щорічному огляді застосування системи примусового ліцензування стосовно фармацевтичної продукції і виступала під час обговорення цього питання. І також Україна здійснює постійний моніторинг та бере участь в обговоренні пропозицій Індії та ПАР під час засідань Ради ТРІПС. Хочу ще декілька слайдів приділити такій процедурі СОТ, як огляди торговельної політики. Під час засідань Ради СОТ секретаріат СОТ також інформує учасників про проведені огляди торговельної політики та надає узагальнену інформацію щодо питань, які стосуються сфери інтелектуальної власності, у тому числі пов'язані з охороною здоров'я, наприклад, про системи патентування, примусове ліцензування тощо. Такі огляди є важливим джерелом інформації про торговельну та економічну політику кожного конкретного члена СОТ. І враховуючи ситуацію з пандемією, під час проведення оглядів в даний час висвітлюються питання про вплив пандемії на економічні показники та торгівлю, а також про заходи, що застосовуються членами СОТ у цьому зв'язку. На цьому слайді можна, я не буду нагадувати про процедуру, просто скажу, що інформацію можна знайти як у звітах, що готуються в рамках процедури огляду, так і шляхом направлення письмових запитань члену СОТ, який її проходить. На цьому слайді представлено приклад запитання України до Саудівської Аравії, направлене в рамках огляду її торговельної політики, що завершився на минулому тижні. Питання стосувалося системи примусового ліцензування, і надану відповідь також можна побачити на слайді. Більше інформації про можливість використання таких оглядів розміщено на сайті нашого міністерства, де можна знайти також посилання про план проведення оглядів у поточному році. До речі, у цьому році відбудуться огляди торговельної політики таких членів СОТ, як В'єтнам, Китай, Аргентина, Сингапур, Росія, Корея. І наш департамент розробляє форми до оглядів, на які є посилання в зазначеному оголошенні. І у разі зацікавленості можна долучитись до цього процесу, сформулювати також запитання, які ми обов'язково розглянемо і намагатимемося врахувати. Підсумовуючи, хотіла б ще раз зазначити, що питання щодо торгівлі та охорони здоров'я є особливо актуальним сьогодні, і вони активно обговорюються в СОТ під час засідань і Ради ТРІПС, а також і інших органів цієї міжнародної організації. Так, наприклад, в рамках діяльності Комітету соцпитань спрощення процедур торгівлі готується компіляційний документ про заходи, що застосовуються членами СОТ з метою максимального пришвидшення міжнародної торгівлі в умовах пандемії. Є і інші ініціативи, про які вже розповів Крістофер. Дуже дякую асоціації за інтерес до цієї тематики та запрошення і всім учасникам за увагу. Дякую.
Дякую, Олено. Thank you for providing a detailed overview of the waiver proposal and the mechanisms of compulsory licensing. Indeed, all countries agree on a common goal of providing access to high quality, safe and affordable vaccine and medicines for all. We just need to agree on necessary tools and means to achieve this objective. Maybe I will stop quickly for now and see if there are any questions, maybe questions to each other. And then if we have something that is coming from the audience and both on the Facebook. And maybe while we wait, I can ask a question to Christopher and Olena. If everywhere now you can hear a phrase, no one is safe until everyone is safe, right? And I was wondering if you can tell us what it is all about and what can be the consequences of bad behaviors and mismanagement of the distribution of the vaccines. No takers? At least on the first part. Because I mean, in Geneva, an international community, and wherever you read the news, everybody say nobody is safe until everybody is safe. So what is this all about?
Ну, моя відповідь, що це питання потребує посилення міжнародного співробітництва та солідарності для забезпечення доступності необхідних товарів, щоб всі були у безпеці, тому що це взаємопов'язано.
Thank you. Elena said that it's about increasing and enhancing international cooperation for the benefit of everybody. Do I see some question? Yes, I see. Yeah. Olesa.
That's me.
Go ahead.
Hi. Good evening, everyone. Many thanks, Maria, for bringing our guests together, and many thanks for having this event. My question is, well, the vaccines are bought by rich countries, or at least by the countries that can afford it now, so far, and these supplies actually exceeds the necessary amounts now. So what do you think the rich countries, let's say, intend to do with the surplus, actually, and is it going to be a problem in the future? Thank you.
If there are no takers now to answer the question, or Christopher, please go ahead.
I can just say that I know that at least from Canada's perspective that there is a commitment to donate any additional supplies to the COVAX facility. I think that's one of the more important mechanisms for ensuring that there is a distribution of supplies around the world, and recognizing the difficulties at the moment. That is at least a commitment that Canada's made to donate those additional supplies through that distribution process.
Thank you. Thank you.
Indeed, that's. I think this will be the practice of most countries. From what we have been reading in the news, that the countries are either donating it to the COVAX or they will be redistributing it to their associates and the countries that are in need. And going back to not everyone is safe until everybody is safe is I was inclining to the statement by the WHO that suggests that for stopping the COVID-19, we will require at least 70% of the global population to have immunity. So unless that is done, will be still at risk. So going to,
Maria?
Sorry, go. Yes,
yeah,
please, Stefan.
It's interesting because it depends. Like for now, considering the current variant, which was active before the one was figured out in UK and South Africa, the requirement was like 70%. But just because the new variants, it could also change, right? because now, as you can see, like the numbers of infected people is growing like more than 30–50% versus what was before. That's why if the numbers of infected people and this variant is more aggressive, then you need to have not 70% but more percent, let's say 80%, because the current variant, the classic one, let's say the variant from previous year, because I don't know like what is now the most popular in Europe or in Ukraine, but in UK the most popular is like the UK variant, and in United States they expect to have this variant the most popular or active as of March. And then this variant, it means that you can share the virus with with 2 or 3 persons. And this new variant, you can share the virus with 3 or 5 persons. It means that you need to have like not just 70%, but maybe 80%, 90%. It depends. That's why the challenge in the United States and rich countries, or let's call it like developed countries, they are forcing this production and vaccination, because they are just afraid that the variant will change, and then it will be new requirements to get this not just 70% but 80% or 90%. So it's like dependency.
I see. Thank you. Indeed, we are living through the history, so everything is changing from day to day. And moving to you, Stefan, I hope you will shed some light on the vaccine, their development and the distribution. First, I would be eager to know what facilitated such rapid development of COVID-19 vaccines. We all heard that it will take at least 2 years for development and trials, and for the vaccines to be authorized. And now already in late November, we're hearing that they're being produced and people will be vaccinated as soon as possible. Was it a public or private funding that contributed to such a rapid access? And also, is that true that some vaccines are more effective compared to others? And if you can then follow up with what are the causes of delays and inability of companies to ramp up production and scale up distribution now? But I can repeat those questions again, please. And you are muted. I'm sorry, you have to unmute yourself.
Okay, can you hear me? Yes, you can. So let me try to share my slides, my deck, and then I need to choose the screen, which is number 3. Okay.
You have a nice home office, huh? 3 screens, not bad.
Actually, I am not at home, so I am in the office, kind of. That's why I have many screens. So can you see my screen? Not yet.
Not yet, no.
Вікторія,
Вікторія, там є дозвіл, да, в Степана, Вікторія?
And now?
No, not yet. Вікторія, Степан проблеми з підключенням презентації.
No, give me a second. It should work. Yep. Okay. It works? Can you?
Дякую, Вікторія. Yes, Степан, go ahead, everything.
Okay, so my name is Stefan Sidoriak. I am from Novartis company. So last 10 years I spent like in pharmaceutical sector. So I'm not like doctor, right? My background is finance and business and IT. That's why I'm considering the current situation and COVID and vaccine more like from business point of view, right? From how it works in terms of system. And a few things about Novartis. So it's our Swiss-based company. Like we have gene and cell therapy is our, let's say, main sectors, the main therapy that we are using and selling. And and we have also other things interesting, but for this meeting, I believe it's just to mention that Novartis is a pharmaceutical company and one of the 5 biggest one. And for today's discussion, I just basically put like some topics, right? Because for me, it's interesting, like, what is the view, what is your views on this situation? And, there are like too many topics, hot topics, I call it like hot topics on the vaccine. And they're topics or the area where I can share like some insights or some ideas and thoughts is like first is supply chain management, right? Because it's interesting and is like the most challenging nowadays. Then is manufacturing, scaling up manufacturing, because I think it was mentioned before that many countries they want to scale and to increase the numbers of doses. And the last one, I think it's partially would be like cross-border healthcare or collaboration, but it's just in general. I don't have like some specific slide for this. And just one more time, Maria, how much time do I have? I need to control myself. Oh, please be aggressive, moderator. Yes.
You have up to 10 minutes.
10 minutes. Okay, probably already 8 minutes.
If it's very interesting, you can have 12 or 14.
Yeah, it's fine.
Just because it's your birthday today. Happy birthday.
Thank you. Yes, I will remember this day, this year. I mean, actually today, I was checking my WhatsApp. Today I received notification that as of today, we are on lockdown, and today we can celebrate, 12 months under lockdown. So this is like topics that I will mention. And first of all, I think you haven't seen, the vaccine ingredients, right? And I just put here just together like the two main vaccines that we have now, the most popular, or yes, I think it's not popular, but from production point of view, the biggest is Pfizer and Moderna, and I believe majority of, let's say, developed countries, they are using these two vaccines. And as you can see, they have many ingredients, or it's called like active pharmaceutical ingredients. They are common, but some of them, they are different. And so all these things supposed to be like sourced from different countries, because actually as for now, I believe even last year, it was announced like some restrictions on export from India. It was like 13th of March, I remember this day. And from United States, they are sourcing like 80% of active pharmaceutical ingredients from India. And it means that in terms of like, in case they have tomorrow some restriction, then you can imagine what will be situation like in production facilities, not only in the United States, but also in Europe. And not only API, but also, vials and dry ice. A lot of things are included in all the supply chain cycle. And that's actually also to give you the view and understanding in terms of like what we can produce. For example, I'm from Ukraine, and we have this discussion if it's possible to have something in Ukraine or somewhere in East Europe. It's not only about, let's say, to have technical production facilities, but also to have the ingredients that could be used. Because as you can imagine, for nowadays, the demand is super high, and all pharmaceutical companies, they contracted in advance like all these ingredients. Next, what I want to share. The two main, like the most popular and the most effective for today vaccines, they are like the first time, that were approved, this type of vaccine that was approved for commercial and for use. And this is the first time that we as a global pharmaceutical industry, we want to produce the number of these vaccines at this scale. And it's not only about, let's say, to have the funding to produce this number of doses, but also to have the skills and technology and to establish, to roll out, to be able to scale this production. For now, almost every manufacturer, like Johnson & Johnson, Pfizer, or AstraZeneca, they all have like some problems with scaling the production, because it's like, you're just learning by doing. And even, like this is like not typical situation when, many pharmaceutical companies, which are normally competitors on their market, they are sharing their expertise, they are sharing, production facilities just to help to scale the production. And one more interesting about the vaccine, that it's also this type of vaccine requires some special glass for vials. And what is interesting that 75% of this special glass for vials is produced in Turkey, right? And 25% in the United States. Again, it's all about going back to the restrictions in case we have like tomorrow, again, export restrictions, and what will be the impact on the healthcare and the production overall globally. And yeah, and this is what I mentioned before, that I think like in 90s, this percentage was totally different versus what is now. The export from India and China was like probably 40%, but last few years it was like between 75 and 80%. What was imported to the United States was from China and India. That's why last year, when it was like announced like export restrictions for API in India, it was like huge impact and huge discussion in terms of supply chain, what companies should do, let's say, in terms of risk management for the future. Because now, let's say what we can see in industry, many companies, they are just investing in supply chain, and even it increased the cost, but basically it just, you know, you're on safe side because you have your APIs, ingredients, just within Europe or within country. So now what is the change? That now the cost effective model is not the main one, but in terms of risk and availability tomorrow, this is now the priority. At least it's interesting what will be in 5 years after the COVID, let's say will end, but still for now, that's the trend. And that's also something that is interesting for me, and I want just to raise it, and it would be interesting to hear from you. Like, for example, I will start from Moderna. I believe this is, let's say, the main vaccine that sourced to Switzerland, and actually from supply chain or from production point of view, the Moderna vaccine is produced, you know, first it was invented by company which is in the United States, and this company, they have facility is like football stadium, right? So this is probably the first commercial product that they have, right? But again, I mean, there is a lot of noise or let's say discussions about the production of AstraZeneca in India, but Moderna technically they don't have like experience because, you know, it's like brand new company. But okay, the production that they have now, they signed the contract and they have it in Switzerland. But then, so what they are doing in Switzerland they are just doing, let's say the main part is active ingredient. But then fulfill and like another stage of the production vaccine is happening in Spain. And from Spain, the distribution is basically just, you know, packaging and labeling, and it's happening in Belgium. And then from Belgium, it goes back to Switzerland, right? So this is the chain, just let's say only within Europe. If we will use, let's say, the example for Pfizer, it will be even more complicated. Of course, it depends like on their production facility, but again, it's not even about their, let's say, the budget or their resources. It's also for from technology perspective and from facility perspective and from their, you know, from availabilities in terms of people, in terms of technology, and in terms of full cycle. And also what I wanted to mention here, that for example, Pfizer, they have full contract for distribution, for marketing and distribution rights globally, except 3 countries, Germany, Turkey, and China, right? Again, I mean, what is behind this decision? Probably because the founders of the company that invented actually Pfizer vaccine, they are originally from Turkey, and company is based in Germany. But again, this is like the example about that maybe supply chain is not the main and the most important part in terms of vaccine distribution, but then it just, let's say, the countries and like some relations and their because in this case it's not even government decision, it's more like owner's decision to sign this contract and to decide how the vaccine will be distributed. And even what was, I think it's quote, it's German Chancellor Angela Merkel. What she mentioned that America actually, like, they don't export vaccine as for now. So even in Canada, I believe, you know, from geographical perspective, Canada is next to the United States, but I believe, Chris, you are sourcing vaccine as well from Europe, Moderna. It's just like, you know, it doesn't make sense from business point of view, from, you know, any, I know, supply chain perspective, but this is, let's say, when you have like, you know, government decision versus, again, supply chain or business decisions. And and the last one, what is expected now in terms of vaccine and production, I believe the latest was that by May, we expect that in the United States, everyone will have access to vaccination. And then after United States, probably it will go to Europe and other countries, because, you know, for now, the main manufacturing facilities, they are located in the United States, like Johnson & Johnson, Pfizer, and Moderna, because in Switzerland, they have just, let's say, I believe 30 or 40% of manufacturing. And in terms of production and the plan for this year, I believe we are on safe side, but now the question is, like, you know, how to distribute, how to share this vaccine and the doses to this, let's say, these respective countries, because I believe even in Canada, again, Chris, probably just because we have you here, Canada, I believe they signed the first contract back in like last summer in August or June, right? So the government, like, they contracted, I believe, like, they have portfolio, it was like more than 400 million doses, and for population, I believe it's like something around 50 million less even. So, but it was, again, it just contract signed in June, and now, because, you know, it's like one let's say, the part of the deal just to sign the contract, but then just to have this available, you know, to produce this, and of course, like a majority of the vaccines, they are supposed to be sourced from the United States, and now I believe last week it was the latest news that Canada sourcing or signed the contract with AstraZeneca, and they're sourcing 2 million vaccines from India. Again, whereas the United States, whereas India, and yeah, it's the new contract. It's not the one that was signed like in June. And yeah, another question is, like, you know, I am just trying to, you know, to moderate and to trigger some thoughts and ideas. Okay, and now we have China and we have like India, so they have as well production facilities, so they can manage. But what about, like, you know, other countries, low-income countries or middle-income countries like Africa, or yeah, or even East Europe? Yeah, and the last one, what I want to share, and I hope I'm almost in time. Their production capacity, at least planned. This is like, of course, it's official numbers. It's just it's changing every week, because I am just checking, you know, the news, and there is like some message that new company signed a new contract. So this is like in total their doses approved, or vaccines approved for use officially. Right? Moderna, Johnson & Johnson, Pfizer, AstraZeneca, Sputnik, 5, and, you know, other vaccines. So as you can see, I mean, of course, we cannot take the numbers like granted, because this is just, let's say, a report what was collected, and but it just gives you, you know, the understanding and the change, you know, the capacity. So, for example, in case we will expect that next year we will need to vaccinate again, to have the second round. In theory, we have, you know, in the production capacities. But now the question is, you know, how to distribute this vaccine between countries, and just, yeah, because as for now, the majority, the major part of facilities, production facilities, they are located in the United States and in Europe, right? Yeah. Thank you. So hopefully, I hope it was something interesting for you. It could trigger some thoughts, and yeah, and we can have some discussion later. And now I need to stop sharing and to give the control back, or you can take it.
Thank you, Stefan. I think the control is back. Thank you for bringing to the table the real life examples of how complicated and interactive the production of vaccine is. Sometimes we don't really realize that the small pieces of things that we need, they're coming from very far away. And I think that puts a good perspective on the work that we are trying to achieve in the WTO to ensure that this kind of medicine supplies and the elements are being, that the access is provided. And also thank you for your thought-provoking questions regarding the poor, what's going to happen with the poor countries. I know that there is a COVAX facility, right? A scheme that is led by World Health Organization, as well as Gavi and the Coalition of Epidemic Preparedness Organizations. And they hope to deliver more than 2 billion doses to people in 190 countries in less than a year. At least this was the expectations. I heard that they're also falling behind because of the production that is falling behind. So we will have to live and experience to see what will happen. Moving now to Maxim, just a few examples. For example, what following up on what Stefan just said, with the second largest population and one of the biggest pharmaceutical manufacturing capacities in the world, India is one of the leading manufacturers in the world, not only on the vaccines, but on the genetic drugs overall. And
50%.
Thank you, Stefan. India's Serum Institute, for example, has committed to keeping half of the doses it will produce for the in-country distribution. Some middle-income countries with manufacturing capacities have been able to negotiate large purchases agreement as part of their manufacturing deals. While other countries with the infrastructure to host clinical trials, for example, Brazil and Mexico, they have been able to use that as leverage in procuring their vaccines and making their deals. Indonesia, for example, is partnering now with the Chinese vaccine developers, and Brazil is partnering with the trials run by the University of Oxford. So my question would be, what do you think is the role of the private sector in this vaccination process, and especially what can be done by private sector in Ukraine? Do you think there is a merit in talking about domestic manufacturing or some sort of deal that Ukraine can secure? And maybe you have some views on how to facilitate the collaboration with the pharmaceutical industry or the transfer of know-how and technology. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Maria. And may I give some a little like reflections on what my colleague from Novartis was saying before, because it's, you know, the question like why there was so fast. There was an interesting question.
Most welcome.
Yeah, and the question is from like perspective of the coronavirus, not maybe really correct, because it was not that fast in reality. In reality, there was quite a long time, and actually we have the scientists, we have quite strong library of understanding about the coronavirus, yes, and we have strong library of existing medicinal products which are used for treatment. So basically what was happening, it was using the existing knowledges in creating something that can affect or that strain, specific strain with the COVID-19 and the SARS-CoV-2. And that was quite a long time. And actually what we are having now, right now, like we have a registration of the candidates, potential 256 in the WHO list, potential vaccines that are waiting for approval or are waiting for initiating on second different phases of trials. And that was absolutely correctly like informed by Stefan. That's the problem with the strain, you know, that's the thing, because right now we are in a huge stress how to receive and how to fulfill a big need on the COVID-19 of one certain strain. So we the way the character development of the virus is unpredictable, and basically it has number of scenarios which are like majority of the companies are looking at, and like we as Roche decided to look on the treatment rather than go for a vaccination. And basically what we are doing now, we are looking for a capacities to create something, capacities for one types of vaccine. Yeah, everybody willing to have some Pfizer, BioNTech, AstraZeneca, and etc. But next year we might face a different strain which will not be aware of. So this is like this is what was new and what human nation faced, and that's why, you know, that's caused this problem. And this is not the new dialogue in terms of like what can we do here in Ukraine. I've heard it 6 months ago, what we can do here in Serbia, what we can do here in Macedonia, and etc. The same things. And the major issue is not only the you know, that's we have a huge need which was absolutely new for the planet. Right now the companies are trying to fight against the biggest need in the world, like never ever faced. And to make this need to be fulfilled, we have to find like a little bit like some of criteria like quality, and safety. And that's the problem about this question, similar question raised in the other countries, and it's left away because of course the company, some countries has some facilities of manufacturing generics and etc. But the level of the technology of the ones cannot actually be responsive to that level of safety and quality that can company guarantee on their own facilities. And basically what we are facing right now, I mean, is innovative industry is actually the other problem. We have to decide which exactly medicinal products should be stopped to manufacture in favor of vaccine to create more quantities. For example, some companies who are creating the oncology drugs, they are right now under the huge decision. Should they narrow or stop manufacturing this type of products and start the vaccination things? And what we're going to do with the need within oncology? And that's, that's the things which are in huge, broad, innovative companies to what we're going to do next, because investments in creating the new facilities are huge, and they're not even that low that we're thinking. And that's the problem with the government. The governments usually ask the questions like, here we have local manufacturer. We can use the compulsory licensing for specific products. And we had the same discussion as brand with the other products which are related to COVID. And the thing is that even the government goes to this procedure, government cannot do anything with that because they need to invest like a couple of $1 billion to only build the line of manufacturing. And that's not, and it's not going to change the situation because this line would be finished like in 2-3 years. And after that, like we will have another strain, and all modern society, more countries would work with the other strain, and the money invested in one line would be absolutely useless. And that's the problem. And I think, and I truly believe as a representative of the company, that this is not only problem, an issue of the government or the companies. That's what we can do here together. Like, for example, in Ukraine, what's initially a problem of Ukraine, that we are in the lowest part of the queue of vaccination with the existing ones, because we are not in the community. We're not in the community, I mean, as the country in the healthcare, because basically, lots of companies, with my colleagues, I've been like working in a different association. I asked them the questions like, were you connected by the Ministry of Healthcare, by the government? It was like last summer, in terms of bringing some products or bringing some initiatives on the COVID things. And there was no, because the government was a little bit reactive on that. And that's what we can do as the private sector, is that the private sector can offer the government the partnership, but this partnership should be accepted. And I'm right now talking about the Ukraine, yeah, because and it is, and I'm not saying that it is impossible for like the train of Ukraine went away. No, absolutely no. That's the issue, that like we have potential 256 new vaccines, which can be approved for the new strains, for like potential development of the virus in the world. And basically what we can do together with the government is basically go to the dialogue and discuss and look for the future, because the examples that you raised, Indonesia, Brazil, Israel, yeah, that's all those negotiations were in the summer, like I don't want to say like a couple of dozen months ago, but in majority like 9-10 months away. And that's why they have, and we're not even saying about like low-income countries and high-income countries. That's about the community. It's about how the countries can cooperate together with and try to develop like new access mechanisms, yeah, and like maybe trial mechanisms, and that's the new. We don't have the specific solutions, but what we have in terms of the access, yeah, of like classical innovative products, yeah, what we have in frame of the axis. It's like managed entrance agreements. We have a number of things that, for example, countries can combine their markets, they can combine their need and can go together to the manufacturer for negotiations and actually to create the queue. But at least this dialogue is supposed to be started, because like in Ukraine, there's a problem like government is not running negotiations with the companies. How can we expect that the products can be here and Ukraine can be even listed? Like, just like, I cannot say this in what I'm going to say like in public, because this is, you know, this relations between companies and business. But we here from Ukrainian office was fighting in a center in Basel to protect some deliveries for Ukraine, the products that potentially may be needed, because we were not connected by the country. And but we were fighting, but it was our own initiative, because we think that Ukrainian population should have like some products in emergency cases. But what we would like to expect, and I think like it is all the manufacturers like Pfizer, AstraZeneca, and the other colleagues would support it here, because even now, you know, you cannot even imagine which pressure has guys from AstraZeneca and Pfizer in Ukraine, because they are now fighting with their own capitals, with their center companies to try to bring something that Ukraine missed. So the way, what I see, what I can recommend from the perspective of innovative companies, basically that Ukraine should be in a community and be more open to the manufacturers as well, because you know, looking to the like very oldish directions in transaction of technology, it can be possible if there is the capacity, but unfortunately capacity is not there, and we have no time to build it. That's the problem. So when the companies, we understand as the companies that in the future we should build, because yeah, there is a couple of scenarios of COVID. Maybe we will have this COVID forever, yeah, and there will be seasonal disease. So basically we would need to have to invest, but it will be the investment in terms of business to cover the best markets. So basically there will be maybe India, China, or something which can cover the whole market. If we're saying about to create the manufacturing sites in Eastern Europe or somewhere in Africa, that's like a huge question mark about the market, about again the readiness of the countries to build the community and to talk.
Thank you so much, Max. So basically what you're saying is that we have enough legal instruments within the legislation, and we're failing in practice due to the lack of the cooperation between the government and the private sector. I would
say, you know, like surprisingly, in terms of legislation, Ukraine did a good job. I can say in terms of like a co-chair of the association, which works very close to the government in terms of creating the proper legislation of bringing. So basically from legal side, Ukraine is ready to receive. The question, we need to agree, because like every morning I monitor press and I see that president talk to head of Pfizer, that prime minister talk to head of Pfizer, but we're not.
I see. Thank you so much. We will move now to the question and answer session. And I see there is a hand of Olesya again. And then we will go to speakers, and I will give you 2 minutes to reflect on the comment of each other and also maybe ask a question. Go ahead, Olesya.
Thank you, Maria. It's absolutely thought-provoking meeting today. I have a comment and a question. So actually, there is this issue in media that Ukraine now has very low rate of vaccination. Should it be viewed as a factor discouraging companies to bring products to Ukraine, or on the other way, it should be like a factor that launch new ways, maybe for the Ministry of Health or for private actors to look for other ways to boost the vaccination process in Ukraine. What do you think about it?
You know, I can only answer from perspective of Roche, and we in Roche a little bit crazy about. We truly believe that not only government is in the ship. Yes, we are together with the government. It cannot be, because, you know, this is how the things are created. And of course, we have to be, as well as the company guys, proactive to fight for the market, that, and like to agree that in a global distribution side, Ukraine shall be there. And like, this is like our mission, vision, and beliefs. But the thing that we would also need the support from the guys as well, that we work together, because it's not discouraging at all. Like for me, you know, like it's a motivator to fulfill faster, to create maybe more innovative way of vaccination. Because like we started discussion with the guys from Virusology Global, and there are a couple of views on the way how the vaccination should be. For example, you know, like the people who already had passed through COVID, they don't have to be in the first of the line. They can be later. That's why like we can cover like more emerging types of population who didn't have the COVID. And here, like we can cooperate with the business, but it needs to be created, the whole process of management of vaccination, you know. And I don't see that it's the minus. I mean, like, thanks God we started doing this. Yes, there is the at least like COVID shield here in Ukraine, and we started to do something, but we need to do it again together. Like the companies should be proactive, and the government as well, like a little more active than they are doing now, but without covering ourselves, you know, like in the house, and like, please don't ask us questions.
Thank you, Max. I also think that just to following up on the question of Olesa, I think there is a lot of rumors in Ukraine about the quality of COVID shield. And there is a lot of perception that because it's a generic drug and it's produced in India, it cannot be as efficient. And also, correct me if I'm wrong, I know the COVID shield is produced based on as a generic drug of AstraZeneca. And there are also, when you read the news these days, you see that several countries have stopped using AstraZeneca, like in Denmark, Norway, Iceland. They have temporarily suspended the rollout of AstraZeneca vaccine. I don't know if that's true, that they are worse quality, or there are some other reasons behind it. If Stepan or Max can address that issue. And then also we are approaching 1 hour and a half deadline. So I suggest we continue for the next 10 minutes, and I will give you, each of you, the floor for 2 minutes to reflect on the conversation we had today. Cool. Chris, do you want to start? Or Stepan? Or...
I can start. I mean, like very, like Perfect. Very, very briefly. You know, it is very hard to say whether it's good or not, because again, it depends on the strain of the virus in the exact country. So basically, for me, it's very hard to understand, like, if AstraZeneca gave their license on manufacturing, that this manufacturing then worse, for example, than AstraZeneca, like South Korea Bio. I don't really think that there is that problems. Lots of, if we're saying about Ukraine, yeah, we have lots of political stuff involved in the vaccination process as well. So basically, we need to understand, like, where is the truth and where is the political janging. And I'll tell you one very fun story. Like a couple of days ago, I had a conversation with a person who tells me, like, this like vaccine is, for me, it's quite scary, and he's staying in smoking, and like, it's scary, I'm not going less. And my question was like, you're not scary to smoke. I mean, the lung cancer is much heavier disease than COVID, and vaccination, even bad vaccination outcomes. So, you know, that's the thing about the awareness about and the healthcare prioritization. What's actually COVID demonstrated us, that the healthcare is not prioritized that well, that we're still in that century, that we are afraid about the vaccines, but we are still using the medicinal products without any proofs of quality. and effectiveness. So like, but it's another story about the access, about the way of the products we have in the market. So basically, for me, it is very hard to understand, to say that this particular COVID shield is bad quality. Well, it's not. WHO have registered it and recommended. So maybe this type of some strain of COVID is not that effective. Yeah, maybe.
Thank you, Maxim.
Do you want me to? Maybe I'll just, as a parting comment. I mean, I thank you for this. This has been a really interesting presentation from all. I was really taken a bit by Stefan's slides. I think this is one area that I have focused on over the last years around export restrictions, and that obviously is a big part of the story in relation to COVID and what's happening. Two anecdotes sort of come to mind that I think demonstrate actually the importance that governments really need to consider what they're doing when they're moving forward. And I think that's what we're trying to do through the Ottawa Group process, and trying to encourage, one, make that political commitment around to make sure that you're following steps and you're staying within a group, within a set of guidelines when you do decide to impose export restrictions, but then also to look for, is there an openness to negotiate new rules or to add new strictures, I guess, to the rule book that would help. And the two that come to mind are one, I think. Stefan had a good example of all the different ingredients that went into some of those vaccines. One company I heard just recently has their supply chain is, I think it's about 280 companies in 19 countries that supply their manufacturing process, right? I mean, you stop one of those, if one of those 19 countries imposes export restrictions on whatever product it is, you don't have a vaccine. It's just not there. You have to find another source for that product, and potentially, as Stefan was saying about the vials and the products that go into it, you don't have it. I mean, it's almost funny in a way about the fact of how the automobile production, we're having problems because why? Because we don't have one single little microchip that's needed potentially, to operate your electronic seat in the car. Without that, you can't build the car. Right. And then secondly, I guess it's a similar sort of idea. It's an example that I heard early on in the pandemic, probably about 2 or 3 months in, when we were looking at this export restriction issues. When the EU first put on their export restrictions, there was a Swiss company that makes ventilators, right? This was one of the devices that was needed most in the early parts of the pandemic. That Swiss company, the tubes for the ventilators came from Romania, but the Romanian company couldn't export the tubes to Switzerland to attach to the ventilator that would then be used elsewhere in the world for life-saving type activity. So again, it's like that sort of that unintended consequences that we're trying to encourage members to really think twice, 3 and 4 times before resorting to this mechanism that, as a sovereign country, you don't want to ever give up that ability to protect your citizens, but you need to think, if your effort to protect your citizens is not actually hurting them at the end of the day. And so that's kind of the export restriction angle I wanted to highlight at the end here.
Thank you so much, Chris. Definitely. Stefan?
Thank you. Yes, I just want to reflect on what Max said before. Yeah, in this situation, we are all together: company, communities, stakeholders, business, government, WTO, and this is a journey, right? It's not like football game. You have 90 minutes, you win or lose. It will be, to be continued. It's possible that it will require like one every year vaccination or every 3 years. It's possible we will have tomorrow the different variant, and we need to adjust. By the way, Pfizer and Moderna, this type of new vaccine, it's easier to adjust in case something is changing. That's why we are happy that we have this new technology. In terms of COVID shield, I am not in the position to comment, but I believe in science. And of course, like the efficiency statistically is lower versus Pfizer and versus Moderna. But in terms of quality versus what is either Covishield or AstraZeneca is the same vaccine from science point of view, but just different brand because it's produced in India. And just for statistic, Canada ordered and certified the manufacturer 2 million of doses of Covishield. UK is basically a company that is AstraZeneca, UK-based company. They procured 100 million doses, and from these 100 million, they cannot manufacture everything in UK. So 10% supposed to be shipped from India. Again, UK 10% Covishield. And this is a company this is, let's say, just statistic. It's not my opinion or you know or just, let's say, some article. And the last one also, I think what was not mentioned today is vaccine diplomacy, because it was mentioned that that in Indonesia, Brazil, Turkey, they will have their own manufacturing, but basically it's just China. They decided, they made a deal that, you know, that they will have trials and they will have full support of trials, clinical trials in these countries. And then as a part of the deal, they will help these rolling out like facilities in these countries. So they just provide technology, like support, and, you know, it's also, you know, of course it's not, I don't believe it's only economical reasons or business reasons, it's also diplomacy, vaccine diplomacy, especially from the East world. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Stepan, Maxime, and Chris. Olena has to leave earlier, so she left, but she also sends her greetings. I think this was a very productive and very interesting conversation. Definitely, the topic is very broad. There is a lot of issues that are still left untouched, but it's our first meeting, and we try to cover the most pending and urgent issues. And I thank you all for spending this evening with us. Thank you, Stepan, on his birthday, being with us here today. Very much appreciated. And thank you for sharing your time and the insights and the experience. And I hope we will see you soon. And I wish you a nice weekend. Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Take
Thank
care.
you. Bye. Take care. Stay healthy.
You too, huh? Get vaccinated.
Well, once the
or not.
once the queue comes.
Yeah, that's true. You have to jump the queues these days again, queuing for everything. Yeah, but COVID is here to stay, so we will have to find a way to survive. Yeah.
We have no choices.
No choice. Yeah. So take care.
Humans. We will adjust.
We will
Bye.
adjust. Yeah. Bye.
Yeah. Thank you, guys. It was a pleasure to see you. Some of you again.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Stay healthy.